$42,500. That is the total amount in aesthetic non-compliance fines a suburban HOA president tried to levy against my 100-year-old family ranch while she planned to pave it over for a luxury strip mall. She stood on my gravel driveway, clutching a designer handbag like a weapon, and hissed, "This porch is a biohazard, and your presence is lowering the property value of my kingdom. Clean up this mess, or I'll have the sheriff drag you out in zip ties." She had no idea I wasn't just a messy neighbor. I was a retired federal auditor with a specialized cleanup crew on speed dial, and I was about to park every bit of her dirty laundry right on her front lawn. What happened next? Let's just say her kingdom crumbled faster than a cheap drywall extension. My name is Silas Vance. I'm 54 years old, and for 30 years I tracked the kind of money that disappears into offshore accounts for the Department of the Treasury. But 3 years ago, I hung up the suit. My wife, Sarah, passed away after a brutal fight with cancer, and the silence of our city apartment was suffocating. I moved back to the only place that felt like home, my grandfather's 40-acre cattle ranch in North Texas. It's a place that smells of dry cedar and incoming rain, where the only noise is the low hum of a tractor. The ranch sits on the edge of a rapidly expanding suburb called the Heights at Willow Creek. It's one of those cookie-cutter developments where every blade of grass is measured with a ruler. I didn't mind them as long as they stayed on their side of the fence, but the HOA president, a woman named Beatrice Sterling, saw my ranch as a stain on her pristine vision. Beatrice drove a white Range Rover that looked like it had never seen a speck of dust, and she wore sunglasses that cost more than my first truck. The first time she invaded my space, I was sitting on my porch, drinking a coffee and looking at the sunset. The porch was messy by her standards, meaning it had a pair of muddy work boots, a stack of seasoned firewood, and my dog's favorite tattered blanket. She didn't knock, she just marched up and slapped a neon orange sticker on my hand-carved oak door. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "the Heights has annexed the surrounding buffer zones. You are now technically under our jurisdiction. This porch is an eyesore. It looks like a hoarding situation." I looked at her, then at my boots. "Ma'am, this is a working ranch. It's been here before your Heights were a blueprint." "Not for long," she smirked, pulling out a folder. "I'm authorized to offer you $200,000 for the back 30 acres. It's a generous offer for a hoarder. If you refuse, the fines for these violations will start compounding daily. We'll lean this property so hard you won't even be able to sell the scrap metal." I felt the old tactical mindset click into place. In the military, we call this a reconnaissance by fire. She was testing my defenses. I told her to get off my land before I let the dogs finish their dinner. She left, but the war had just begun. I knew she wasn't just after the land. She was hiding something behind those designer shades. The fines started arriving like mortar fire. Every morning, a new registered letter. $500 for unauthorized agricultural equipment, my tractor. $1,000 for unapproved exterior colors, the natural weathered wood of my barn. By the end of the month, the messy porch fine had ballooned because I refused to move my firewood. I decided to stop playing defense. I spent 20 years following paper trails that led to dictators. A suburban HOA president was small game. I started my surveillance. Every evening, I'd sit in the dark on my porch with a pair of thermal binoculars. I noticed that Beatrice's Range Rover was frequently parked at the county records office after hours. I headed down to the courthouse myself. I spent 4 days in the basement, smelling the dust of old parchment and the ozone of the copier. I found the annexation agreement she mentioned. My eyes narrowed. The signature of the county surveyor looked slightly off. The loops in the S didn't match his public filings. Then I followed the money. Using my old credentials and a few favors from former colleagues, I looked into Sterling Development Company, a shell company registered to Beatrice's brother. I discovered that the $200,000 lowball offer she gave me was just a front. The HOA had already pre-sold my back 30 acres to a commercial developer for $4.2 million.
But here was the kicker. To make the annexation legal, they had to prove my property was blighted or abandoned. Beatrice was intentionally manufacturing evidence of hoarding and neglect to trigger a forced emented domain seizure through the HOA board. She wasn't just an arrogant neighbor, she was a white-collar predator. One afternoon, I caught a crew of surveyors on my land, driving stakes into my pasture. I walked out there with my camera rolling. "Who authorized this?" I asked. The lead guy pointed towards the HOA clubhouse. "Ms. Sterling said the land was forfeited due to unpaid fines. We're marking the demolition zone for the new mall." I looked at the stakes. They were deep in my property line. I realized then that Beatrice wasn't just trying to find me. She was trying to erase my family's history for a paycheck. I needed more than just a lawyer. I needed an army.
Beatrice realized I was digging, and she went nuclear. The character assassination campaign started on the neighborhood Facebook group. She posted photos of my ranch, taken with a telephoto lens, claiming I was running an illegal scrapyard and that I had hostile tendencies toward women. One morning, I woke up to find "hoarder" spray-painted in bright red across my barn. Then came the welfare checks. The local police showed up 3 times in 1 week because of anonymous tips claiming I was storing explosives and endangering neighborhood children. Each time, the officers, who knew me and my grandfather, apologized, but they had to follow protocol. The darkest moment came when Beatrice called Adult Protective Services, claiming I had lost my mental faculties and was living in squalid, dangerous conditions. A social worker arrived while I was working on a fence. It was humiliating. I had to show her my clean kitchen, my organized records, and my medical files just to prove I wasn't a danger to myself. Beatrice didn't stop there. She organized a community safety meeting at the clubhouse. I showed up in my work clothes, smelling of cedar and sweat. When I tried to speak, she had a hired security guard block the microphone. "Mr. Vance is a relic of a dirty past," she shouted to a crowd of fearful homeowners. "His messy lifestyle is bringing rats into your backyards. He is refusing to comply with the beauty standards we all agreed to. For the safety of our children, we must vote to finalize the land seizure." Neighbors I used to wave to now looked at me with disgust. One woman even pulled her child away as I walked by. I felt a cold, hard anger settle in my chest. It wasn't just about the ranch anymore. It was about the truth. That night, Beatrice sent one last warning. A brick came through my living room window with a note attached. "Last chance. Take the $200K or lose everything in the fire." I didn't call the police. I called my old team. The Operation Clean Sweep was officially a go. If she wanted to talk about messy, I was going to show her exactly what a real cleanup looked like. I recruited 3 people who were the best in their fields. First was Marcus, a bulldog of a real estate attorney who specialized in HOA fraud. Second was Elias, a forensic accountant who could find a missing penny in a hurricane. Finally, I contacted Ghost, a former digital forensics expert I'd worked with at Treasury. We set up a command center in my dining room. Elias spent 72 hours straight tracing the $4.2 million developer deposit. He found it hidden in a Cayman Islands account linked to the HOA's maintenance fund. "Silas," Elias said, pointing to a screen glowing with spreadsheets, "she hasn't just been fining you, she's been embezzling from the entire neighborhood. Over $2 million in landscaping fees went straight into her brother's shell company. Your ranch was supposed to be her grand finale, the big score that let her retire." Ghost managed to recover deleted emails from the HOA's private server. We found the smoking gun, a PDF of the annexation agreement with a digital timestamp showing it was created after Beatrice claimed it was signed. It was a total forgery. But we needed the theatrical evidence. I hired a specialized private hoarding cleanup company, the kind with the giant biohazard trucks and crews in white hazmat suits. I didn't hire them for my ranch. I hired them for a special delivery. On a Friday evening, Marcus served a federal subpoena to the county records office, freezing all documents related to the Willow Creek annexation. We had the evidence of wire fraud, forgery, and extortion. But I wasn't just going to hand it to a judge. I wanted the whole neighborhood to see the mess Beatrice had been hiding.
She wants to talk about messy porches, Marcus laughed, looking over the bank statements. Wait until they see the rot in her foundation. This isn't just a lawsuit, Silas. This is an execution of her reputation. We spent the night preparing the presentation. I felt like I was back in the field, prepping for a high-value target takedown. We had the wiretaps, the forgeries, and the financial trail. All we needed was the stage.
The stage was the annual Willow Creek Founders Gala. It was Beatrice's crowning achievement, a black tie event held in the neighborhood park right next to my fence line. She was on stage, wearing a gown that probably cost more than my tractor, bragging about the new development that would increase everyone's wealth. Just as she reached the climax of her speech, the roar of diesel engines drowned her out. 3 massive neon yellow trucks with hoarding cleanup and biohazard removal logos pulled right onto the manicured lawn. 20 men in full white hazmat suits hopped out. They didn't head for my ranch. They marched straight to Beatrice's front door, which was visible from the park. Beatrice turned pale. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked into the microphone. I stepped onto the stage, wearing my old Treasury suit. I didn't need a microphone. My voice carried. "Beatrice, you were so concerned about my messy porch that I thought I'd return the favor. My team did a little audit of your books. It turns out your house and this entire HOA is filled with the stench of federal wire fraud." I handed a thick folder to the local sheriff who was standing in the front row. At that moment, Ghost flipped a switch. The giant projector screen Beatrice was using for her strip mall presentation flickered. Instead of architectural renderings, it showed her private emails discussing the forgeries and the Cayman Island bank account balances. The silence in the crowd was deafening. Then the hazmat crew began unloading the props I'd prepared. Massive blown-up copies of the forged documents, framed like art pieces and placed all over her lawn. The sheriff read the first 3 pages and looked up at Beatrice. "Miss Sterling, you're going to need to come with us." Beatrice tried to run, but in those heels, she didn't get far. She was handcuffed in front of the entire neighborhood she had spent terrorizing. The image of her being pushed into the back of a cruiser, her designer gown snagged on the door, went viral instantly. The fallout. Beatrice Sterling was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for wire fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Her brother got 8 years. The court ordered $5.8 million in restitution. Every homeowner in the Heights received a check for $15,000 to cover the embezzled fees. As for me, I sued the HOA for harassment and won a $1.2 million settlement. I didn't keep it. I used the money to establish the Vance Heritage Trust, which protects historic ranches from predatory developers. The HOA was disbanded by a 98% vote of the residents. Today, my ranch is quiet again. My porch is still messy. It has my boots, my wood, and a new rocking chair where I sit and watch the sunset. But now, when my neighbors walk by, they don't look away. They wave, because they know that sometimes it takes a little mess to clean up a whole lot of corruption.